In this video, I'll be putting down some cork drawer liners in some kitchen drawers. I'm using this contact adhesive backed cork liner. These cost about $10 per roll, and I'm using the 18-inch depth roll. Each roll is about 48 inches long. I'm going to start off by weighting down the roll. It kind of wants to curl back up, and you want to prevent that. And I'm using the adhesive backed version. They're sold in non-adhesive backed, but it's a very light adhesive that won't pull the paint off of your drawers, so I actually prefer the adhesive. I'll be reinforcing this with glue, which I generally wouldn't recommend, but I'm doing as an experiment here. You want to line everything up and start pulling the adhesive off. You don't want to pull all the adhesive off because it'll get very hard to pull back, but you want to carefully pull it back, push the liner down, and work your way slowly. You have to be very, very careful here because the cork is under 1/16 of an inch thick and it wants to tear. So you have to do this with a lot of caution, particularly if the cork is bent in some way. At this point, the first side is done. You can see it's flat and everything is square. I haven't pulled back all the adhesive, but I'm getting ready. You really want to make sure that everything is square now. If your drawers aren't square, then you will have to correct the cork in order to adjust for that. I'm using a very light set of wood glue here, and I'm going to scrape it down just so it's, again, a nice light coating. This generally isn't recommended, but I like the cork lining. I want it to last. I don't want it to lift, so I'm going to do an experiment here with the wood glue and see if it's worth it. The adhesive on the back of the cork lining is very, very light, so you could pull it up, which is nice for making adjustments, but it means it doesn't really become a permanent part of the drawer. Again, I'm going to experiment with this and see how it goes. I'm laying out the liner now, and you could kind of just roll it out so long as you could maintain a straight line. You want to make sure that the front of the liner doesn't push up against the front end or the front wall there. It will naturally kind of either pull forward or back, so that's why I'm lifting it up, adjusting, lifting up, adjusting over time. You will see some slight bubbling, and that is why we have that nice light adhesive, and you want to work while your glue is still wet. You could pull up the liner, adjust it flat, and put it back down. At the end, my drawers are slightly longer, or slightly shorter than the cork, so I'm going to use a razor and give it a quick cut. This is actually a surprisingly difficult cut, which you don't know exactly where the corner is, so you really want to cut on the long side and adjust it. I cut mine a hair short, which is annoying, but not so bad. This is a hidden corner. Now we have to adjust the second portion of the liner, in this case the second roll, because the liner doesn't line up perfectly with the drawer. You could use the back of the adhesive section, and there are some guide templates, so you're making sure your cuts are straight and you're getting exactly what you want. If your drawers are square, then you can measure, and this is a relatively easy job if you're careful with your measuring. Just make sure your cuts are straight and you're using that guide or using a straight rule if your drawers are a little bit off square. That way you could have nice straight lines. For the straight cuts, when the liner is free, I prefer using scissors. If you use a nice sharp set of scissors, you'll get a really clean cut. It'll be better than using a utility knife. I'm testing this out now and making sure that my cut was good. It looked good, so I'm going to apply some wood glue. Again, this is a small section, and the adhesive on the back isn't quite enough to hold it down that well. I could have done a larger section, but I wanted to use the whole first roll in order to get the best aesthetic results. Here I'm putting the end of the cork down. There's a little bit of a gap, and if you kind of push the two together, you can minimize the gap, but it's really hard to make it to go away entirely. You have to remember that these drawers are going to have pots or pans or whatever on them, so a line here or there really won't be visible at the end of the day, but you do want to make it look as good as possible, especially if you are using that wood glue on the bottom. Right now I'm flattening everything out, and I'm trying to minimize the width of that crease or that line between the two sections of the cork. You can lift it up now, even with the wood glue down, and push the two closer together and really make them blend in. It's hard to make it look perfect, but with some patience, you can make it look much better than it did previously. And again, you can lift this up a few times and improve the results if you have enough patience and your glue doesn't start to set. I'm just about done. I'm going to tape down or glue down the last section with the adhesive tape on the back, and now I have a final corner that has to be filled in with the cork. This is again going to require 2 quick cuts. Because you can't really get a scissor in there, I'm just going to notch it, and this is where I'm going to cut. I'm just doing the other notch now, and now I'll be ready for using the scissors to do my final cuts. At this point, you're getting very exact because the square or the rectangle there is a very particular size. So you have to be really careful with your measurements, and if you're a perfectionist, you're going to have to straighten your edges, and then you might have to fill in some little gaps with cork, or go a little bit larger with the size of the piece that's going in place, and then cut it down once it's in place. It's really up to you how you want to do it, and then up to you about how perfect you want this to be. Again, if there's going to be a frying pan or something on top of it, maybe it's good enough if it's not quite perfect, but it's up to you about how crazy you want to make yourself. So we're just about done here, and you can see there's a bit of a gap on the front, and obviously there's a back on that far corner. So at this point, you either have to redo this piece or start making adjustments. I'm painfully making some adjustments, but it's getting there. There's a small gap here where I mismeasured. I'm just going to fill it in with a piece of scrap cork. That's easier. If you put a little bit of glue in here, you could really push it in quite hard and blend it in better than you would with the adhesive alone, and it's really not going to lift up over time. You could see if you really push in there with the glue, that corner really disappears. Here's the final result. You could see there's some visible seams, but by using that front section and using one long continuous piece, everything that's messy or bad is hidden in the back. And here's the final result. You can see you'll be covering up any of the messiness, and the result is a really nice cork lined drawer. Thanks for watching.